everywhere you look, it seems that things are changing, things that we thought perhaps even took for granted. We have a gentleman, Brandon Smith, who has written a new book. It's called Nothing Was Broken. You Don't Have to Crash to Change. He's also the CEO of Modern Sober, a modern lifestyle movement centered around clarity, presence, and intentional living. I hope he's not going to take my nightly martini away. Brandon, welcome to The Truth.
Thank you very much.
So explain to us, where are you coming from? Nothing was broken. What are you talking about?
Well, it comes from my own experience. I'm a father. I've been in business for 20 years, successful, raising a family. It was a realization that I had become dependent on alcohol for almost every social event, whether that was business, socializing with friends, sporting events, even just resetting at night. And it wasn't a question of, do I need to quit? It was a question, what happens if I do? And that realization gave me so much more clarity in my life, my connections with my family, my capacity at work, that led me to write Nothing Was Broken and eventually start Modern Sober.
Well, I think that is a wonderful story and a great way to live. I grew up in a family with an alcoholic parent. It was very hard, but it did cause me to be very mindful of how much alcohol I consume. When I was younger, probably more closer to your age, I was more diligent about worrying about my consumption than I am today. I don't drink too much. I just drink regularly, like every night, a martini and chased with a glass of wine. I don't think that that's over the line.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm in denial. But once a year, I quit drinking. Last year, I quit for 100 days. This year, I quit for a month. And it really isn't that big of a sacrifice. That's the conundrum. That's the paradox that I can't even resolve in my own mind. Why am I willing to ingest a accepted poison? That's what alcohol is. It's really a poison. When I can live without it. But then the allure at night is compelling.
And that's the question. I mean, we were almost brought in and inherited the idea that that's how we have human connection. And I also was in that environment. I mean, throughout my life, I started in oil and gas, work hard, play harder. And I was responsible for how I drank. I never had a DUI. I wasn't passed out. But I learned a few things about alcohol. And when you take a drink of alcohol, you're shutting down your frontal cortex. That means you're shutting down your operating system. And unfortunately, I think in our society, it's either you're fine or you have a problem. And most people aren't going to have a conversation of being called an addict or an alcoholic. So there's a big space in terms of what is life without it. And I'll ask you the question, 100 days without having a drink, how did you feel?
Yeah, honestly, not much different, really. I mean, I'm generally in pretty good spirits. I consider myself to be happy and grateful for where I am in life. Been married for 48 years, have 3 adult sons, 2 grandchildren, nice quality of life. I just use alcohol as, frankly, I look at it as a reward for a hard day's work. If you want to get right down to the crux of the matter, I work my butt off. I'm 73 years old. I wake up at 5 a.m. Anthony back here will tell you, we talk every morning at 7 a.m. to plan our show for the day and for the week. And that really launches my day, and I go until 7 at night. And so I don't feel bad about having a drink at the end of the day, just as kind of a reward. It's like, okay, you did it. But maybe that's the wrong mindset, because I do think I could slip over the line if I'm not careful.
And a lot of people can't. And listen, there's a lot of people that are functioning, raising families. I was exactly the same way. My drink was a reward-based thing. I reached for that. But when I stepped away from it, I started to look at it. And when you look at the word sober, unfortunately, we look at sober like that's somebody that has a problem. They had to be sober. Well, sober is a legal term in law.
Sounds like a life
Sober judge
sentence to
making
me.
Well, that's a problem. That's, you know what a life sentence is for those that are playing around with a poison and they go past an invisible line. I mean, you and I both know that
Yeah,
if you go past that invisible line,
100%.
the devil catches you, then they're fighting for their life. That's recovery. I'm not Modern sober isn't redefining recovery. It's pointing out that there's habits and behaviors that we probably don't need, and we're dancing with the devil. And if you don't catch it right, you can have devastating effects. And I choose not to do that because, like you, I'm intentional about how I've been raising my children, how I've lived my life.
Well, I really commend you for that. Your strategy, I think, trumps mine. Frankly, I am really conscious of the fact that that line is there, and I've tried very diligently not to cross it. And candidly, since we're being honest with one another, part of my motivation is that I do want to be able to continue to enjoy that cocktail at the end of the day, and I'm aware that if I get too far out on the risk curve, that I may never be able to drink again, and that's a consequence I don't want to allow to happen.
That's where I want modern sober to be a language. Look, sober means it's a life sentence or you have to you're in recovery. That's not it. Modern sober is an elevated lifestyle where we're choosing clarity instead of numbing ourselves. And that is some look, people go to the gym, they pay thousands of dollars for a coach, a trainer. I stepped away from alcohol for 120 days. I've lost 20 pounds. I work out 5 days a week. That 20 pounds came from the empty calories I was ingesting every night. That was free.
That's usually the motivation for me to stop drinking. It is really twofold. One is just to prove to myself that I can do it, and secondly, to lose weight. And after 3 weeks of not drinking, the weight shreds off of me. It's miraculous. Things can really snowball two ways. I mean, it can snowball in a positive direction. It can snowball in a negative direction. When I am actively monitoring and reducing my alcohol content, I'm much more diligent about getting to the gym. I'm more diligent about getting aerobic exercise. So, and I'm more strict about my diet. So it does have a very positive compounding effect.
Yeah, and then there's the question is why do you go back to it?
Good question. I don't have a good answer for you.
Fair. And I want to just say this, like a part of my book, I grew up oil and gas, a good friend of mine who lived the exact same life as me. Oil and gas comes with a lot of alcohol. VP of a company, and he danced with the devil and he was fine performing, doing everything. Unfortunately, it wasn't through drinking, but he got himself into a divorce and he didn't fight for custody because unfortunately some men don't do that, not because he didn't want to see his kids, but the moment he lost time with his kids, that alcohol turned into the devil. And unfortunately, he's no longer with us. He drank himself to a place where I had to hold his hand before he died. And that
I'm
is
so
the
sorry.
devastating effect with dancing with this. So when I say it, look, the consequences are great. We all know it. We all have somebody that has lost something through behaviors or substances. Why are we doing it if we can turn it around and we can be more clear with our family, have connections with our family? And to be honest with you, modern sober, this wasn't something that I was planning on doing. It's not a business. Once I found clarity, I finished the book. There's been inspiration behind it, and the idea of modern sober is like a language. It's inviting. Language has power, and there's power in choice. And to say somebody is modern sober, even if it's for look, modern sober isn't you stop drinking forever. It's just taking long enough breaks to seeing the benefits of your life in your authentic self. That could be a reason, a season, or a lifetime. It's not a sentence.
I like that. That's a very good mental approach to the topic. I feel better now. So, a lot of alcohol sales are really down in this country, and the Gen Xers, they're not drinking like the baby boomers have and do. I don't know. Are you? Where do you put yourself on that continuum? Are you a millennial?
Well, you know what? I think I'm a Gen Xer. I born in 1980, so whatever that means.
Oh, you're a youngster. So yeah, you're
Yeah. Time flies, so I got to watch out for what I'm doing now if I want to take care of my future self. But The downturn in alcohol, I think that's great, and I think the next generation's asking better questions. However, we are introducing pot and weed as a legalized substance, so we're trading our spirit with from alcohol to disconnecting with weed, which is not being sober. So I'm not sure. I agree with alcohol going down, but what are we taking instead of? And that's also a question, because modern sober isn't about alcohol or substances. It's about weed. It could be about gambling. It could be about social media. It's any behavior that's not servicing us anymore.
Well, I think that you raise a very good point, and that is the explanation I hear a lot is that Gen Xers, while they are not drinking, they're popping a gummy or two or vaping, and so I think that in the not too distant future, we're going to look back on that and say that was a big mistake. I've never been a fond of weed. And I have looked at people that have smoked a lot of marijuana, and I do think it encourages people to be lazy, less than productive, and I don't think it's a good substitute.
I think that both of them do the same, have the same problem. I mean, for weed, I tried that, and I'll tell you right now, that took me right off the board of life within the first puff. Alcohol didn't do that. So I think some people think that weed is not a harmful thing. I can't operate on it. I don't understand. And to say that that is a better alternative, I disagree with it full-heartedly.
It's delicious, it's nutritious, and best of all, no dishes. We're talking about Bogey's Beef Jerky, of course. Premium craft beef jerky that's taken off at the most prominent golf courses and resorts across America. Made for the turn, the road, or whenever you need a bold protein-packed snack, Bogey's delivers the rich flavor and that premium chew every time. From smoky heat to Pineapple Express, try some Bogey's beef. They've got a flavor for every player. Bogey's Beef Jerky, tee it up, tear it up, and enjoy. So you mentioned social media. I've read in your bio or in your write-up here that France has banned social media for teenagers. That's quite a bold move.
Well, I think it's teenagers and down from teenagers. And it is a bold move. I don't see it just as a social media position. I see it as another sign of society is becoming or asking bigger questions around behaviors that shape our lives. When you look at the age of majority, age of consent, even with us in America, you can't have a drink unless you're of age. Social media, we all know as parents how dangerous that can be. I can't speak to a country's policy. I'm glad I live in America. And I believe in first right, and I believe in free speech, and I believe in information, having access to information. But I have to be cautious, and I'm guilty of, a screen being in my 5-year-old's hand. That is not the same as what I used to have as a BMX bike in a forest and things of that nature as a child. They're losing their childhood through screens, and it can be it can be scary, and it also can be very dangerous. So if you break it into parts, do I see limiting the youth before they're fully developed? I might agree with it. In terms of country policies, there's a lot in France I don't agree with, but that's not what modern sober is about. So I'm of two sides of the coin here on that one.
Well, I share your concern. I think that anything that limits free speech is something to be extremely cautious and wary of. I would prefer that it not be legislated. I would prefer a Nancy Reagan, just don't do it, educational approach to warning young people about the tendency to become addicted to social media. I get it. Based on the nature of what we do, I spend a lot of time on social media and watching mostly YouTube. And sometimes I'll catch myself and I'll consciously think, I've now been here 45 minutes and I'm like watching these reels. They are so captivating.
Addictive.
And it's really hard to tear yourself away from it. And I have to very intentionally and consciously say, it's time to move on and get back to work
I
now.
agree.
But if you're 13, I'm not sure you've got that presence of mind to be able to
Well, and
realize that.
I'm just going to reverse the conversation because you brought up something about just say no back in the day. That's what I grew up with. And that sounded restrictive.
Yeah.
And it also was, back in the day for me, it was sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And then somebody tell me just say no. That was like a perfect recipe for my entire generation to jump right into it. So, to restrict a younger generation and say you can't have it, well, they're going to find a way to do it anyway. So there's that fact. Trying to restrict it from that standpoint.
Yeah, I'm not sure that
No,
just say no
I think that
really
was an
worked.
invitation
I
to
mean,
go and do it.
it did sound good,
No,
and
I
I think
agree,
the intention was
100%.
good.
I agree with it, but it
Yeah.
was a secret sauce that went the opposite way that probably was not intended.
So how's the book doing? What kind of feedback have you gotten from it so far?
The book's been listen, it's one thing to do it and set a book out into the world. It's like having a baby. I wrote it on purpose as a modern memoir. It's not long. I don't ruminate on things in life. I went to the point of what it is and what I've learned. I hope it gravitated to other people. I have been getting messages often, on all spectrums of life where been some inspiration because it speaks to a simple point. And it's been a wonderful experience so far. It's humbling. Modern Sober is turning into something of a movement in some respect. Everybody has had an impact in terms of somebody or themselves with behaviors that didn't serve them, and this is just a new language. So I'm happy to do it. It's almost been a divine thing. It wasn't something I was hoping to do. I still have my career. I'm raising my family, but there's some things that are better than money, and if I'm helping somebody, even if it's just one person, it was worth it.
Well, I think you're giving a great gift to your children by choosing a lifestyle as you've described. Brandon Smith is the author, and the book is entitled Nothing Was Broken. You don't have to crash to change. And you could maybe coin a new term and say you're the original sober maxer.
Well, you know what I'd like? I mean, if the end goal was this, if people could be in a social environment and somebody asks them, "What are you?" and they say that they're modern sober, and when they're in a social environment, they chose not to have a drink. It's not because they have a problem. It's because they're choosing an elevated lifestyle. They're choosing to be clear tomorrow and not trying to pay dividends or interest on a late night and having a hangover. Pretty simple.
Sage advice from a relatively young man. Thank you, Brandon. I appreciate you coming on The Truth today and sharing your story and the book. Where do we get that book?
It's on Amazon. I did the audio book for those that not a big fan of reading. It is available on audio, and you can also find it on modernsober.com. I have a full apparel line wearing a conversation and inspiration of choosing clarity. So you can find that at modernsober.com. The book is on Amazon. I hope it helps somebody.
Well, likewise. Thank you so much, and come back soon and often and keep us posted on how your movement is going. It's called Modern Sober. Definitely food for thought.
Thanks.
And that is The Truth. I'm John Gordon.